Natasha and Her Illegitimate Child in a Muslim Society. A novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This story is narrated in 2 books. Book 2. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer who may quote brief passages in a review to be printed in a newspaper, magazine, school journal, or university article. This novel is a work of fiction, but the entire story is based on the actual life of a Muslim family in Sudan. Therefore, all names, characters, places, and incidents are either the product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, events, or locales is entirely coincidental. Chapter 29. Love is in our hearts and not in our minds. The Qatar Airways plane took off as it has been scheduled at 2:45 p.m. from Dubai International Airport and headed towards Heathrow International Airport. The plane is full of Arabs and hardly one could see any person from non-Arab nationality. One could feel as if he is still in one of the malls of Abu Dhabi or Dubai. Every woman is wearing either hijab or niqab, and every man is having long beard and putting on those Arab clothes which looked like the women's nightgowns. Everyone is speaking to his neighbor in Arabic. Even the air hostesses are speaking to the passengers in Arabic language. The movie that is playing on the big screen in front of the passengers is an Egyptian movie. Some deeply religious passengers preferred to close their eyes and insert headphones in their ears and hear the recitation of their Holy Quran. The food menus that have been placed in front of the passengers for their selection are containing variety of Arab delicious dishes. As soon as the passengers unfastened their seatbelts, the air hostesses began to distribute the food. Everybody seemed happy and excited for either visiting the capital of the Western civilization for the first time or returning to his or her family in the United Kingdom. Every female is accompanied by a male who is either her husband, father, brother, or an adult son. The only male and female who are not related to each other in any one of those strong family ties are the 2 lovers, Jamal and Nadia. Dr. Nadia is closing her eyes and reclining on her seat, and in the back of her mind she is replaying again and again that midnight adventure which began by an accidental fall in the bathroom, resulted in bodily injury, followed by a rescue, and culminated into wonderful love intimacy. It is the most wonderful experience she ever had in her entire life. Dr. Nadia never expected either of them would cross that red line which they drew for their good friendship. If it wasn't for the accident, they might never reveal their love for each other. On the eve of their departure, Dr. Nadia spent many hours at night typing in her laptop all the data she collected during that day about women. She even uploaded on her YouTube page all the photos she took during her tour in the city. Luckily, in Saudi Arabia and all other Gulf countries, everywhere she went she found internet connection. She did not want to repeat the same mistake she did in Sudan. She expected that her laptop might be searched at the airport. For that reason, every day she entered her data and photos in her laptop and then sent the files as attachments to her email and also uploaded them in her YouTube page and then deleted those files and photos. She did not want to be caught of having those files and pictures in her laptop and hence accused again of spying for Israel or an agent for the West and sentenced to death as happened to her in Sudan. So, on that night as usual she stayed until midnight working on her laptop. Before she decided to go to bed, she went to the bathroom. She knew that Dr. Jamal was sleeping in his room and for that reason she never bothered to put on her Islamic niqab and wear those disguising scars and moles. It was her accidental fall that alarmed her undercover life partner and made him run for her rescue. Until he brought her on his arms and treated her injury, Dr. Nadia did not know that she was in her short nightdress and without her coffin-like black niqab and ugly scars and moles. Her bruise happened to be in her left hip. She allowed her lover and doctor to massage her left leg and hip. She enjoyed so much his masculine hand touching her on those sensitive parts of her body. She wished that he would continue forever caressing her body. It was only when her handsome lover Dr. Jamal began to stare in wonder at her face, she realized that she was caught red-handed. Instead of questioning and blaming her for lying to him, Dr. Jamal exposed his romantic feelings and expressed his deep love for her. His loving touch and hug forced her to give up her continuous efforts and struggle of hiding her love for him. She was the one who started the kissing, and he was the one who began the lovemaking. In that quiet night and silent moments, Dr. Nadia, after many years, allowed a man who wasn't her real husband to make love to her. Since the black day she discovered that she unknowingly fell in love and married her own brother, she decided never to fall in love again and have sex with a man. Even so, that silent night, all those efforts and self-denial were broken, and her soul, mind, and body dived into the bliss of love once again. Neither she nor he has felt that they have committed adultery, and they must be punished for such moral sin. He was caught red-handed. Instead of questioning and blaming her for lying to him, Dr. Jamal exposed his romantic feelings and expressed his deep love for her. Although everything happened without any one of them could control it, still none of them has told the other that, "I love you." Dr. Nadia is puzzled by the silence of her lover. Why he does not want to say anything to her. Did he touch her because he found himself facing an uncontrollable temptation when he saw her exposed body and revealed face? Why did he not ask her about the mysterious disappearance of those ugly marks on her face? After everything was over, he just assisted her on going to her room and wished her good night and returned to his room. Next day, when they met, he wished her good morning as every day he used to do, and that was that. After reasoning out her thoughts, Dr. Nadia concluded that Dr. Jamal is not interested in pushing the friendship further than just good friends. She even thanked God that he did not confront her with her hidden identity or asked her to marry him. How could she marry a Muslim man? What would be his reaction when he would come to know that she is a pretender and has nothing to do with Islam? He might even accuse her of using him as a cover-up while she was carrying out her research on women in Muslim countries. While she is deeply engrossed in those thoughts, and their plane has already flown for a couple of hours, Dr. Nadia felt the hand of Dr. Jamal gently tapping her shoulder. When she opened her eyes and looked at him, he brought his mouth near her face until his lips touched her right ear. Then, he whispered in her ear, "Have you made up your mind?" "Made up my mind about what? Will you accept me now as your real husband?" Dr. Nadia found herself out of words. She had not expected him to ask her such a direct question. But then she is faced with an honest question and understands that she has to give a sincere answer. She looked at him for a while and then said, "We need to talk before I answer your question." "Okay, let us talk now." "Not now." "Why not now?" "We can talk while we are waiting for our next flight in London airport." "As you wish, dear." For the remaining hours of flying, Dr. Jamal did not bother Dr. Nadia and left her to continue her deep rumination. She seemed to him as if she were meditating in an extremely difficult and complicated problem. Her silence and postponing the answer to his question have created some fear in his heart. He is worried that she might reject his proposal for being his real-life partner. Maybe she is already having a husband in Canada. He has never fallen in love with a woman before. For the first time, he felt the joy of falling in love with someone. He understood why his late wife cheated on him because she had a lover. She wanted to spend her life with her lover, but he came in between and separated them. But he wouldn't be able to set them apart. They met again and resumed their romance. Unfortunately, lovers have no rights to be together in a Muslim country. Eventually, their sincere love was interpreted as adultery and led to the cruel death of the beloved girlfriend and rendered her lover a severely handicapped person all the rest of his life and moving in a wheelchair. Likewise, Dr. Jamal loves Dr. Nadia and wants to spend the rest of his life with her. She did not only save his life, but she gave him hope and filled his life with indescribable joy. He enjoyed every moment they spent together in their apartment in Dubai and those visits to other Arab countries. In every city they stayed together in a hotel and slept in the same room. But he never tried to touch her or express his love for her in words or action. Nonetheless, on the previous night when he carried her on his arms and touched her delicate body for the first time, he felt as if another being entered in him and forced him to express his love for her in words and action. If she refused him now, he thought he might be drawn again into those ugly suicidal thoughts. The two intimate lovers have arrived in London after 5 hours of uninterrupted flying. They had to wait for 7 hours at Heathrow International Airport before they would board their connecting flight to Toronto. As soon as the couple reached London, Dr. Nadia excused herself and went to the washroom. She spent a long time in the washroom before she reappeared again. During that time, she removed her Islamic niqab and put on beautiful t-shirt and jeans. She combed her long hair and left it open. She felt as if she came out of a grave that she was buried inside it for long 6 months in those male-dominated Arab countries. As soon as she reached the West, she felt that she was once again in a wonderful world and among civilized people. Before she came out of the washroom, she dumped those Islamic abaya and niqab in a garbage container. She has been tempted to flush them in the washroom as if they are human refuse that the person should get rid of them as quickly as possible before their nasty smell would spread and cause discomfort for other fine ladies and gentlemen of the civilized world. Meanwhile, Dr. Jamal has become a bit worried about the long time that Dr. Nadia has spent in the washroom. He does not know whether to go and find out what has happened to her or just keep on waiting and hoping that everything is fine with her. While he is waiting, he saw a beautiful young girl came and occupied the seat of his Canadian beloved girlfriend. He felt angry because the young girl did not even ask him whether the seat was occupied or not. She only removed the handbag of Dr. Nadia and occupied the seat. He turned his face to her and said angrily, "Excuse me, miss. This seat is reserved for my wife, and you have come and removed her handbag and sat without asking a permission." The beautiful young lady smiled and then offered her hand to greet him and said gently, "My name from now onwards is Dr. Natasha and not Dr. Nadia. The girl you know as Dr. Nadia Ahmed has died and has been buried inside the washroom, and here is the true Dr. Natasha Shams al-Din." Dr. Jamal could not understand a word from what the beautiful young lady has said to him. When Dr. Natasha understood that Dr. Jamal did not recognize her, she said again, "I am the same girl who has come with you from Dubai to London. Now we can talk about the future of our friendship." When Dr. Natasha said, "Now we can talk about the future of our friendship," Dr. Jamal should be able to recognize her. Even so, still his eyes refused to accept this daring young woman who is shamelessly dressed up in a man's clothes could be the same Muslim girl whom he knew for over 4 months. He has never seen before a Muslim woman dressed up like a man and exposed half of her sexy breasts, and her tied jeans is revealing her big buttocks. The girl he knew and fell madly in love with her is a committed Muslim girl who always obeyed her religious laws and cultural heritage. How could she suddenly change into a Western girl? She appeared to him as an angel of holiness and purity who has transformed herself into a demon of lust and temptation. How that incredible change could happen into someone's life, that is beyond his mental capacity to comprehend. Without uttering a word, he waited for the satanic female creature who has claimed to be the same holy girl he knew and loved to explain her mysterious change. "I can understand why you seem to be unwilling to believe that I am Dr. Nadia, the girl you have known for so long. I refuse to answer your question on the plane because I don't want you to build a serious relationship in deception. I have not intended to deceive you, but my circumstances in the Middle East force me to pretend to be a Muslim girl when I am not. In fact, I have not been a Muslim in all my life. I was born to Muslim parents, but brought up by an agnostic grandfather who never believed in any religion or even believed in the existence of God. I was born in Sudan, and when I was 3 days old, my irreligious grandpa took me to Ethiopia and raised me up in Addis Ababa. When I was 15 years old, we immigrated to Canada. At the age of 20, I converted to Christianity out of my own accord. When I grew up, I discovered that I was an illegitimate child, and my parents never married each other. I had been made to pay a heavy price for that immoral mistake and religious crime that my parents committed before I was born. My brother, too, was born without the sanctity of marriage bond and was raised up in a Christian orphanage in Khartoum. He was cruelly treated by the Coptic Christians and harshly punished by the Sudanese Muslims for a crime that he had not committed. Wherever he went, he was called Wad al-Haram and treated like a parasite and an outcast. But I won't bother you about those painful and cruel details that my brother and I went through because we are illegitimate children. To cut a long story short, when I grew up, I had accidentally stumbled upon the bitter truth of my family and therefore came to know about the cause of my sufferings. My mother was tried and condemned by the Sharia court in Khartoum and sentenced to 200 lashes for committing adultery before marriage and delivering 2 illegitimate children. For that reason, I went to university and began to study the status of women in Islam. I did my theoretical study at Toronto University, and I obtained a bachelor and master degrees in religious studies. Then, I went to McGill University in Montreal and enrolled in a PhD program specializing in Muslim women. For my fieldwork, I traveled to Sudan to study the social conditions of Muslim women. While I was in Sudan, I was falsely accused as a spy for a Zionist group and condemned as an apostate from Islam. Therefore, an Islamic Sharia court sentenced me to be hanged to death. When Dr. Natasha reached this stage in her sad story, Dr. Jamal interrupted her and said, "I know the girl about whom you are talking. Every Sudanese in Saudi Arabia knew about your case, and all of them hated you with passion. I hated you too with bitterness. In those days, I looked at you as the most despicable Sudanese woman I ever knew. I believed everything the Sudanese newspapers wrote about you and the Arab media said about you. I did not believe that you were innocent from those accusations of being employed by some enemies of Islam to make a false case about Muslim women in Sudan. I was so mad with the Sudanese government when they released you due to some foreign pressures, especially from the USA. In those days, I wished in my heart that you should be put to death for spying for the enemies of Islam and for defaming the bright name of Sudan. You had made me to feel shamed and all other Sudanese living in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and other Arab countries. You had made everyone to reproach our women. I had never expected that I would meet you one day and I would fall in love with you. Why did you do all those ugly things? Why are you still lying and pretending to be Muslim and spying on Muslim societies? What are you going to gain and who's behind you? Yes, I am pretending to be a Muslim girl, but I am neither a liar nor a spy. I have no one behind me in this except my conscience. I want to learn and expose the evil practices that have done to female children and other Muslim women which are sanctioned and encouraged by the teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah of the so-called Prophet of God, Muhammad. I want to help Muslim women as well as men to reject and denounce those barbaric practices of the Sharia law. I want to prove to them that your wife was innocent and she wasn't supposed to be stoned in that cruel and inhumane way. I want the Sudanese Islamic court to apologize for scourging my innocent 16-year-old mother 200 lashes until she died for having sex with her lover. I want the Muslims to stop the evil practice of female genital mutilation. Islam is an evil religion which abuses the woman by allowing the man to marry 4 women at the same time, beats his wife, inflicts female genital mutilation on his children, rapes female children through the so-called halal child marriage, forces women to wear demeaning burqas, slays women in honor killings, explodes his body in bits and pieces believing that he will get 72 virgins in paradise. The husband can divorce his wife with or without reason, but she can't divorce her husband. Women are not allowed to go to schools, work, or drive cars. They can't step out of their houses without close male relatives guarding them as if they are children of prisoners, etc., etc., etc. I do agree with you that Islam is unfair with women, and I had come to this conclusion after my wife had been stoned to death for having sex with her lover. Ever since that time, I lost respect for Islam, and I stopped believing in God. I am sorry I have not shared this with you before. Now I am an agnostic person like your grandfather who believed in no religion or any deity. However, I do not agree with the method you have used to carry out your research on women in Muslim societies. I do not believe anybody needs to lie to expose evils. None of the great souls in human history had used deceptive methods in solving the problems of his people. Neither Jesus, nor Muhammad, nor Buddha, nor Krishna, nor Socrates, nor Plato, nor Aristotle, nor Gandhi had lied to their people while they were exposing the evils of their societies. Still, I do not want to be your judge and judge you in what is right way and what is wrong method of carrying out your research on women in Islam. What is important to me now is that I wish you will accept me from the bottom of your heart as your real husband despite we have many differences in our thinking and approach to life. I have no problem with you being a Christian girl. Still, I love you and I wish I can spend the rest of my life with you. I love you too. But you must know that love is in our hearts and not in our minds. As regarding your question, I have already allowed you to enter my heart, and I have accepted you as my real husband on that wonderful time when I allowed you to touch me and make love with me. However, let time and our circumstances in future test our love and commitment to each other. I hope you won't desert me when you come to know more about my tragic life in the near future. Chapter 30. Incompatible Life Partners. Dr. Natasha returned to Canada with a great surprise to her brother Wahid Muhammad Ahmed and his Ethiopian wife Almaz Abraha. At first, they have not believed her words when she told them that she fell in love and married a Muslim man who became an apostate from Islam. Although her brother is not comfortable with the new lover and husband, still he understands that his sister is free to make her decision regarding her life partner. As she surprised them with her marriage, her brother and his wife surprised her with the happiest news that she had ever heard. They told her that her application for a teaching position at the Department of Religious Studies at Toronto University has been approved and her appointment letter has been sent to her. The letter invited her to come as soon as possible and begin her teaching job. Dr. Natasha has become exceedingly excited, and joy knows no limits have filled her heart when she learned that she would be able to teach Islam and impart to her students her great fieldwork data, which she has painstakingly collected in the Middle East. She put her life at great risk through her 2 undercover trips to the Muslim world. She believes that through her academic career, she would be able to make great contributions to those who are interested in doing research in the field of women in Islam. As a female professor of religious studies, Dr. Natasha expected that her future writings on women in Islam would carry more weight and would be taken more seriously in the academic circles in many Western universities and high schools. As soon as Dr. Natasha started to teach Islam at the University of Toronto, she began to work side by side on writing her new book about the lives of women in the Muslim countries she had recently visited with her new lover. She did not yet inform anyone about her secret visit to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and participating in those pagan religious rituals of the Islamic Hajj. She did neither tell anyone among her students nor the other professors of religious studies about her marriage to an ex-Muslim who became an apostate. She also said nothing about her visits to the other Muslim countries. She decided to leave that information for the future when her new book would be written and published. She expected that her book is going to create huge positive and negative reactions. She has no idea whether the readers of her book are going to look at her as a brave heroine or a female pretender and deceiver. She remembered how her ex-Muslim lover had negatively reacted when she revealed to him about her secret visit to Sudan. Furthermore, she could not anticipate whether her future controversial book was going to send her to jail or to her grave. She might be accused as a female deceiver and pretender by the Middle East embassies in Canada and send her to jail or be haunted and killed by the Muslim terrorists. She might be fired from her new teaching position under the charge of conflict of interests. Everything is possible in the case of her upcoming new book. Despite all the anticipated involved risks, Dr. Natasha went ahead and began to work on drafting her new book. In the meantime, in her married life, Dr. Natasha is facing so many difficulties. She discovered too late that her marriage had been based on a hasty decision. She unwisely agreed to marry a person who does neither shares the same religious beliefs as her nor has he the same interests in life as she has. Her husband is not like-minded as her, and that created some tension in their married life. Dr. Jamal found it difficult to accept the Western way of life that Dr. Natasha had fully adapted to it. For example, he does not like the way his wife puts on Western clothes. He objected when she put on short dresses such as pants and bikinis. He refused to allow her to go to any swimming pool or beach. He is against the idea of allowing his wife to expose her semi-nude body in public places, and that before men who are not related to her. Moreover, he is against the idea of his wife going to the gym. Although he claimed to be an apostate and does not believe in Islam, his behaviors and decisions revealed that he still has a typical Muslim man mentality. Dr. Natasha understood her husband's problem because he lived all his life in a strict Islamic society, which puts so many restrictions on women. Therefore, Dr. Jamal might need time until he is able to cope with the free Western society. For that reason, she decided temporarily to follow his demands and avoid upsetting him. Yet, another problem that she is facing in her married life has to do with finding proper work for her husband. Dr. Jamal's medical degree that he obtained from Khartoum University has not been recognized, and his work experience as a medical doctor in Saudi Arabia has also not been approved. If he wanted to be recognized as a qualified medical doctor, he must go back to a medical college at a Canadian university and redo all his courses. But that might take between 5 to 7 years and would involve a lot of money. Dr. Jamal is not willing to go back to college and study medicine again. He also does not like to do any labor work such as a cleaner or security guard, which most of the new immigrants started their working careers with. Whatever academic qualifications they had achieved and whatever working experiences they had gained in the countries they came from, they would not be able to find work in those areas of their specializations. Therefore, finding appropriate work for Dr. Jamal became a big problem. He said he does not want to stay at home and depend on his working wife. Time and again, Dr. Jamal told Dr. Natasha that it is against his cultural upbringing that the man sits at home and his wife goes to work and feeds her jobless husband. In addition to those problems, Dr. Jamal is poor in English because he did his studies in Arabic. Besides that, he practiced medicine in Riyadh City in Arabic too. For that reason, he needs to learn English before looking for work or return to any medical college. He has to sit side by side with those Sudanese refugees and other immigrants who many of them have never been to school in all their lives and learn English as a second language. It is often used for non-native English speakers learning English in a country where English is commonly spoken. After successfully finishing that course, he must sit for his TOEFL exam. It is a test of English as a foreign language. It is a standardized test to measure the English language ability of non-native speakers wishing to enroll in English-speaking universities. In addition to this English test, he must do the GRE examination. GRE is a standardized test that is an admissions requirement for most schools and colleges in the USA and Canada. The GRE aims to measure verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning, analytical writing, and critical thinking skills that have been acquired over a long period of learning. The content of the GRE consists of certain specific algebra, geometry, arithmetic, and vocabulary. The GRE general test is offered as a computer-based exam. He must score remarkably high marks in those tests. Then and only then, Dr. Jamal can get admission to a Canadian medical college. The third difficulty that Dr. Natasha must deal with in her problematic married life is her unwanted pregnancy. She does not want to be pregnant so soon, especially she has just started her teaching career. That wonderful midnight love rapture in their shared apartment in Dubai City resulted in Dr. Natasha being impregnated because she had sex with her life partner without the use of a condom. Dr. Jamal has no objection if his pregnant wife has decided to abort the baby, but Dr. Natasha refused to do so because of her religious faith. She knew that abortion is a murder, and she will never kill her own baby by her deliberate decision. For that reason, she was determined to keep the baby. The fourth and last problem that Dr. Natasha has to deal with in her married life is the strong antipathy and abhorrence that her husband is showing toward her Christian faith and Christian friends. Although her agnostic husband claimed to have forsaken Islam and accepted her as his lawful wife at the London International Airport after he came to know she is Christian, still he has unbelievable hatred toward the Bible and everything to do with Christianity. He openly condemned the Bible as a false and corrupted book and Christianity as the religion of the white man who throughout history oppressed and enslaved non-Christians. As modern examples, he referred to the occupation of Iraq and Afghanistan by Western troops, and the State of Israel, which he believes has been illegally and unjustifiably created on the Arab land. According to his belief, which all Muslims and Arabs shared with him, the people who claimed to be Jews and occupied the Palestinians' homeland are originally Europeans who converted to Judaism. They are Khazars who became the Ashkenazi Jews. The Khazar hypothesis of Ashkenazi ancestry, often called by its critics the Khazar myth, is the hypothesis that Ashkenazi Jews are descended from the Khazars, a multi-ethnic conglomerate of Turkic peoples who formed a semi-nomadic khanate in the area extending from Eastern Europe to Central Asia. Therefore, Dr. Jamal, like many Muslims, believes that those Jews of today who are living in Palestine have nothing to do with the Semitic Jews who lived for hundreds of years in the land of the Arabs, and they are still living among the Muslim Arabs without fighting with them. As such, today, Jews, as many Arabs and Muslims claim, have nothing to do with the ancient Jewish prophets Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, David. Dr. Jamal also believes in the so-called conspiracy theory of the terrorists' attacks on the Trade Center in New York City. Like many Muslims, he claimed that the September 11th attacks had been carried out by the American CIA and the Israeli Mossad. Therefore, according to that conspiracy theory, Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda and all Muslims had nothing to do with September 11th. While arguing this point, Dr. Jamal always refers to the words of the Mullah Omar, the former president of Afghanistan and the spiritual leader of Taliban, who said to the former president of the USA George Bush, "Give me one proof that Osama bin Laden did 9/11, and I will hand him over to you." According to this conspiracy theory, which began to gain many supporters in the Muslim world, Bush could not give one single proof to the Mullah Omar and still invaded and occupied Afghanistan. Based on his strong belief that the Promised Land belonged to the Arab Palestinians, Dr. Jamal refused to condemn Hamas and Hezbollah as terrorist groups, but he considered them freedom fighters. Those differences have made Dr. Natasha conclude that her husband and she are incompatible partners. Still, she believes that Dr. Jamal might change in heart and mind if he accepted Christ. But his gross hatred towards Christianity and Christians made it hard for her to talk to him about Jesus. She knows that he does not want her to have fellowship with Christians, but she is openly defying his authority and goes to her church every Sunday. In the meantime, Dr. Natasha asked her Christian brothers and sisters to pray for the salvation of her unbelieving husband. Lastly, lovers are sexually incompatible. The Western wife Natasha has found that Dr. Jamal has very primitive understanding of sex. He is like many men of his culture. Sex means subjugation of the wife by her husband. He does not know how to prepare his female partner for sex and helps her to reach her clitoris orgasm. His main aim in sex is to reach his climax and ejaculate in her private parts. Therefore, many times he made his wife Natasha extremely frustrated when he refused to carry on until she reaches her orgasm. Luckily, her husband has not yet come to know about her great hidden secret of her unwittingly marriage to her own biological brother Wahid and having a baby girl together. She has no idea what his reaction will be when he comes to know that she has 2 children who were both born out of an unwittingly incest with her brother and father. Would he believe her if she informs him that those sexual ancestral relations had happened unwittingly? Natasha and Her Illegitimate Child in a Muslim Society. A novel by Dr. A. Ahmed.